Are you in love with your partner, or are you in love with the idea of them? And how do you know? It is really easy to get caught up in the idea of who your partner could be, to have a story and really want to be in the story of the romance of a partnership. But is that enough? Is it enough to think that you could change them, that they could be somebody else? Or is it important to be in the present with them, to love them for who they are right now? And why does it matter? Those are the things that we really want to dive into and talk about today, to really understand what's important in a connected relationship and how do we get to the true deep connection of soul love. So let's get started. Hey, Heart Leader community, if you're liking this video, don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe. All right, let's start with what does it even mean? Because you and I would say that we are, thankfully, I've been in a lot of different scenarios, right? I've had everything from being in love with the idea of being in love to being in love with the idea of a person to being soul connected. And really beginning to understand what are those differences? What are those nuances? And how do you even know? And why the frick does it even matter? I think that's the core of this. Why does it matter as long as I'm feeling love? And I want to get to that core point because a lot of people say, what does it matter? If we feel love for each other, does it even matter if I'm in love with their soul or if I'm in love with the idea of them or if I'm in love with the idea of being in love? What do you think?
I think it's a beautiful sentiment and I love where it's coming from, but the practicality and the reality creates unintentional problems that people can experience. And I feel like it's actually a lot more prevalent than people realize because it's so overlooked.
So what is the difference even between being in love with the story, being in love with the idea of being in love, or being in love with the potential of someone versus being in love with the soul?
Three different things, like you said. And I feel like those are a really good way to differentiate them. To me, I feel like the first, being in love with the idea of love, is an easy trap to fall into when it comes to romantic comedies or romance movies or romance books or romantic holidays. They create this perfect picture of what this is what a relationship looks like. And even in, it's really tough in movies because they don't really show what actually goes on. It's the highlight reels. Maybe there's some tough times and that happens in relationships, but there's always some level of an ending that is fairy tale. That is, it's to close a plot. It's not to actually say, hey, this is actually how you move through this.
Yeah, this is real life, right?
Yeah, this is real life.
This is real life.
Yeah, many times a lot of it has to do with maybe there are plot holes, and there aren't, like, it's just to get from one thing to the next. It's a quick transition, and it's not actually a way to get from some issue to to being all good again. And in many ways, it's actually unhealthy, and that creates a picture of an unrealistic experience of love that no partner could ever live up to. And I think that's the segue into number two.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're feeding that with the way we're doing media nowadays, if I'm being quite honest, right? And including podcasting, right? And I just want to be thoroughly transparent here. We are creating this flow of, I only want to see the perfect parts in social media, in podcast discussions, in television, in all of these things. And so then we translate that into our relationships. And we want to create these perfect relationships to mirror what we're seeing on all of these other platforms because somehow we're being taught that this is how it is actually supposed to be. Well, mental note, folks, everything that you see on all of those platforms is edited to only give you the best bites. And all of those things are equally as messy as relationships, right? It's how we learn, it's how we grow. And I guarantee you, even on this podcast, if you go back to the very first podcast we ever did, it's going to be a lot messier and a lot uglier than the one you're watching right now.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important. So, why is it important that we really dive into topics like this? Because when we're projecting an ideal of something onto someone else and being in love with the idea of them, then we're not giving them the opportunity to be even better than that idea of them. We are limiting their capacity to grow, to have the relationship grow, to be something even grander, as you say, even grander than the greatest vision of anything that we think it could be. So we've already placed it in a box and limited anything that it could be. Where soul love is seeing the person that we're with for who they are and appreciating them for exactly where they are and who they are in the moment, even if it isn't exactly what we think it should be because of all the other things that we've seen. Putting them in a box means putting ourselves in a box, and it limits our growth. And that creates a problem because now they can't grow, we can't grow, and our relationship can't grow. And that's no fun. I mean, where do you go from there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's unattainable perfection. And the problem is, to kind of circle back to number two a little bit, or actually even back to number one, is that, most of these movies or stories are in maybe a 1.5 hour to 2.5 hour time frame, right? So that's a really short story arc. How many relationships have we ever been that lasted 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours? Probably not our most successful ones, you know.
Probably not, a vacation love.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I met you on vacation and boy, was that fun kind of thing, But yeah.
But you can't really get to know someone in the depth of their soul in that short of time.
Yeah.
But in a movie, there's this forced time arc, right? That you have to follow through. It could be years in a matter of hours that you're experiencing. But we don't know, like that's not highlighted or expressed throughout the movie. And so we just focus on the way it made us feel, right? Which is then again, it moves into number two, which, as you were saying, it puts people in a box. But also, what it does is it creates uncommunicated expectations that someone else, your partner, will never live up to. And it's impossible because the person in the movie is not even real. And so how can we place that on someone else that isn't even, we're asking them to be someone and something and deliver in a timeline that isn't even real. And so we're just setting ourselves up for disappointment and we're setting them up for failure. And that's not what you do to the people that you love. And thirdly, when it is that full soul love, you need time. And that's the thing that gets skipped over. There's deep, unconditional, true love takes time to develop and to connect and to understand.
Even hearing that, it seems like what you're saying is that idea-based love or developing ideas around people. So that idea-based love is projection, where soul-based love is perception. We get that perception of one another, and we're able to perceive who we are as true souls and grow together from that. So we're not projecting things onto each other and putting each other into a box. we're actually taking time to sit with one another and perceive who we are and how we can grow individually and together.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of this is missing. Honestly, I don't know if it's a number four or a number zero, and maybe
Okay.
that's something we can kind of
Let's work it
touch
in
on a
there.
little bit.
Let's work it in.
Is our capacity to love ourselves inherently limits our ability to love someone else. And so, if we have a very limited capacity to love ourselves, no wonder we're going to be projecting love onto anyone else in terms of one and two, right? Because we are so in a box with who we are that we are attempting to, as you say, loving someone through someone else, through them,
I want to love me
through
through
you.
you,
Yes.
right?
And
Like,
because we're not in love with ourselves enough to experience it within ourselves and allow that love to grow individually, in tandem.
I have some amazing news. Silence Your Inner Critic was nominated for two different book awards, the International Book Awards and the Book Fest Awards. And I'm so grateful. I want to give it away for free. We have an amazing opportunity if you click below right now where you can get Silence Your Inner Critic plus a whole bunch of amazing resources up to $200 worth. All you have to do is cover shipping and it'll come right to your door. Again, just click below and get your copy now. Yeah. And that becomes such a codependency factor,
Mm,
right?
yes.
And that's where codependent relationships really begin to build. Because if you're not around, then I can't love myself. And I can only love me through you when you're present. When you're not present, then I feel unlovable, unworthy, all of the uns, right? And so it really does. It creates this whole perception of, I need you, which then can cause one heck of a spiral, right? But that's a topic for a whole different day. But it does help with the whole concept of, am I in love with the idea of you? And part of the reason I may be in love with the idea or the story of us is without that story, I don't know how to love me.
That's beautifully well said. And
Right?
that's oftentimes what I feel like we as people and struggle on when creating connected relationships is that we fall in love with the story more than the person. And then as the person shifts, because we place this expectation that that person will always be and fulfill that story. And so if they change and maybe they grow and maybe they actually become an even better version of themselves, we may actually miss that better version of themselves because we only see them in the way that they were, that to fit the story. And then we only see ourselves in relation to that story. And so by someone else becoming a better version of themselves, which is something you should like, as a partner, you would want your partner to become a better version of yourself because honestly, like when you are the best version of yourself, I benefit from it. It's
Yeah.
amazing. When I'm the best version of myself, you benefit from it. And then individually, we both benefit from it. Right. But if we're so caught in the story and we're keeping someone, locked down or small because of how we think they should be to fit the story that we're wrapping our heads around,
Books.
yeah, box exactly. What we're doing is we're actually limiting the love that we have for ourselves, and we're getting lost, and it's almost like we experience an ego death, and it's hard to reconcile because we think it's outside of ourselves, but the reality it's all happening within ourselves.
So, how can you know? How can you know if you are projecting or perceiving, right? Are you in love with the story or the idea, or are you in love with the soul? And I feel like this is where the four questions that we have really comes into play, right? We have taken time to create 4 questions that you can begin to ask yourself. Now, we're not saying these are the only 4 questions you can ask, but it has to start somewhere, right? And this is a good place to begin to explore and say, I wonder, and let me begin, because often it's not even about the question, it's about the beginning of the dialogue to explore and seek to understand. And then that starts you on the journey. So let's start the dialogue. And we have these so that we can make certain we get the questions to the letter. And we will also make sure that they are in the show notes so that you can reflect back and pull them up. But just begin, right? Begin to reflect and understand. If you feel like this is you or someone you know, then just start here, right? So, do you want to start with question number 1?
Absolutely. So, question number one is, do I feel peace around this person or pressure them to be someone else?
Yeah. And part of the reason to explore that question is if you feel like you need to change someone, that they are a work in progress, then there will consistently be this desire in you to offer them suggestions for change or see them as your masterpiece somehow. Now, I'm not saying there won't be times in relationships where you're helping each other grow. But if it's constant, and I mean constant, it might be something to ask yourself. We all have different kinds of relationships. This is not saying that your relationship is defined by this question. It is a place to begin exploring. If you are constantly in this place and you do not have peace, there is not a moment where you feel, okay, now we're good together. There's nothing to change. There's not a moment to be present together because there's always something that needs to be worked on. You might want to visit that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we, again, back to movies. We see this in movies or TV shows, and we always hear that, he or she likes a project, he or she goes for those broken ones because they can fix them, and that's it really, it does show up, and it's kind of viewed as like funny, but the reality is that it's super unhealthy. And so when we are attempting to uh, make ourselves feel better by quote unquote fixing someone else and building them, because they're broken, again, now we're placing that relationship externally. We are projecting what they should be instead of uh, complimenting on who they are and seeing potential. And I think that's maybe the fundamental difficulty that we have is differentiating between uh, and I know this is kind of something we've been kind of discussing through this, but just to be ultra clear, it's really really tough to differentiate between projection and potential, because just because we think someone should be X, but have we taken the time to really talk through, is that even who they want to be? And so if we're so busy saying this is what they should be and not taking into consideration, that's where it's going to be really hard for you or for anyone to have those peaceful moments and to not feel like they need to keep changing someone because basically their identity is tied to it, not like their own identity is tied to it, not the other person in the relationship.
That's such a key point, right? And that I think is the difference between connected growth or projected need for the other person to change.
Yes.
So moving on to question 2 to begin to explore. If you're sitting in silence together, do you feel connected or do you feel anxious? Right? And this isn't something, again, these aren't like all the time. It is just something to understand the majority of the time. What is the overwhelming feeling? If there's projection that is occurring, then typically it is, oh, I need to do something. I need to do something. I need to do something. Because you're in the past or you're in the future. If you're connected, you're in the present and your souls are just sharing, right? And there's a desire to be present in the moment with one another. And that anxiousness just kind of begins to fade away. Generality, I understand, but entry point to begin to ask yourself and understand. Number 3.
Number 3, uh, do I notice their authentic light or mostly their potential?
Ah,
And again, this is another key differentiator because we talked about projection versus potential, but now what about potential versus authenticity, basically, as a whole? And so that's a tough one, and I feel like there's a lot of people could really relate to this because how many times, whether it's a friend, coworker, maybe you've actually hired someone, for example, maybe it's a parent or a child, or I mean, there's so many different type of relationships other than romantic in this that this actually we experience in different ways, and it's how much, like, maybe on paper it looks amazing and it should look amazing. And it's like, hey, this is exactly, what I think it should be. But the reality is that it isn't that. And everything you're attempting to do, or everything, maybe both of you are attempting to do it. And that's admirable and wonderful. But if it's just still not a fit, because both may be looking at the potential of each other, or one may looking at the potential and the other is not living up to that potential, you know, just because someone can do something doesn't mean they have to. It doesn't mean they should. Maybe they are very happy not living up to their potential. I'm not neither here to condemn or condone that choice, but that's the authentic light that we're talking about. If we're so focused on who we think they should be, then we're going to miss out on who they already are. And who they already are may have far more potential than the projection that we're placing on them. And so it just may be a stair step into their light. And maybe their light needs just to be brightened more. And what's happening is we're unintentionally dampening and darkening their light because we think it should be X instead of Y.
we think it should be shown in this way,
Mhm.
but what they actually want to do is shine it this direction,
Yes.
right? And so just because on paper it looks like it should shine this way, it's a light, right? It's so bright, and like any light, they could choose to pivot it and shine it here or here or here. We just happen to have our lens over here, and we think, oh, you should shine it over here where my lens is pointed. Well, says who? They get to decide where they want to shine their light. So maybe they want to pivot it and shine it over that direction. So let them decide where it's going to shine, right?
Yeah.
And stop projecting from your lens of reality where you think they should shine their light. That is something to sit with. And you're right, there are all kinds of different relationships, including our partnerships. And so if we're just projecting and not connecting and communicating, how do you know if your partner desires to shine their light in the direction you think it should be shown?
Absolutely. And maybe their their authentic self may not align. And so learning how to effectively let go and allow someone to be who they are, whether or not you're together, that's a really tough one to move through, because that could happen in work. Or maybe you feel like you have someone that's perfect for the job. You can't buy passion. You can't these that are just really right for it. And it's so great. But all of a sudden, just the way that they work just doesn't align with the organization. It doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them bad or anything. It doesn't make you wrong or you bad. It just means it's not a fit. It's not a frequency. It's like attempting to reach, 80 an AM radio station through the FM radio. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to find it. Um, Both are great, great radio stations, but it's just they're just in different areas. And so that's why I feel like that one is such a really strong way to understand.
Start to explore.
Mhm. And then I think it leads beautifully into number 4.
Yeah. Which is, am I attached to the projection or the idea of the person? Or am I in love with who they are now? Right? Which is very different. It really goes back to, I'm in love with their potential. I'm in love with who I believe they could become or who I could make them if they just listen to me. Right? Talk about an ego moment and an ego death if they don't, which is where a lot of us, I did it. I know. I've been there. I have t-shirts, right? That saying, where we get to a point where we feel like, all right, they have that potential. And if I can help them tap into that potential, I'm in love with where they will get to in the future. Well, that means that you're in love with your ego, right? And I'm just ripping the Band-Aid off there because I've been there.
Yeah.
And I had to rip the Band-Aid off for myself. That was a very ego-driven thought because it wasn't about them at that point. It was about me thinking that I knew better for them. And how unfair of me. Because that took out of the equation what they wanted for their own life. Instead of now, where you and I am in love with every little thing that you do. Even the things I do not understand. And there are plenty of them. And I'm sure you have the same for me. You're probably like, why would she do that?
I keep Austin weird.
You do keep Austin weird. But what that allows me to do is always stay on my toes. So then I can quickly turn it back and go, I don't understand why he just did that. But that means I have something that I can learn.
I'm always like, why is she on her toes? There's better ways to stay.
So when we can do that, when we can go, I don't know why they're doing what they're doing, but what does that show me about me? And what can I learn about myself as a result of that? And be in love with the person as they are, where they are, then it's no longer about our egos then. And we can realize that our egos might be the greatest block to the best relationships we'll ever have.
Yes, 100%. I'd love to expand on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's expand.
Up until you, and even including you, that was basically me to a T. I would go into every relationship with this idea of what it would look like without actually even taking the time to understand if that's actually what I wanted. In the moment, could be a couple of, could be on the first date, it could be a couple of weeks in. The moment that person didn't fulfill what I thought it should look like, I stopped it, I cut it, I was done, moved on. and I actually even kind of did it with you.
You tried.
I attempted to, but
you certainly attempted.
And it was my ego that was in the way of my own happiness. And here we are over 11 years later, still in our honeymoon phase. And if I hadn't listened to my ego, I would be unhappy. And here, now letting it go, I realized something just really, really important. And why this number 4 is so, so critical to this is because if we are in projection, my feeling is that we are in the energy of lack and fear.
Yes.
If we are so focused on what someone else should be, that source energy of where it's coming from is fear and lack. We are afraid that of how we might look. We're afraid of how they might look. We're afraid of what we as a couple would look. Will other people, be friends with us? Will they think we're
People
bad?
think.
Yeah. Will people make fun of us? Will they think I'm like, what are they doing with them?
Mm-hmm.
That's the fear of projection. Where authenticity, when we truly love someone for who they are as they are in the present moment, then we're coming from a place of gratitude. And gratitude stems from abundance. And
Yes.
so if we want to experience love, then we need to invoke gratitude. The more gratitude we have, the more we unlock that abundance. And then we're abundantly in love.
You just mic dropped the 3-step process.
Oh, that's why I'm 11 years very happy.
Yes, we are. It's so true though. And that's, you have the 4 questions and now there's that 3-step. If you truly desire that soul connection and you are in a relationship and you feel like, oh, I have been projecting and I've been projecting the idea of this relationship. Does that mean that it's too late? No, it doesn't. Even if you come to that realization, it just means that maybe there's a little pivot to do, right? A little Ross moment from Friends. You just need to pivot and begin to do that connection part in that 3-step process that you just talked about. You need to pause, right? You need to pause on your projection and begin to really go within and ask, how can we begin to connect soul to soul? Right? And then you need to have that moment of returning to being present with one another. And what that looks like for you is what that looks like for you. But be present together, whether that's sitting together in silence or going out for walks together, or every couple finds a way to be present with one another in a different way. And then return to gratitude for who you are, where you are right now. So pause projection, be present, be grateful. And those 3 simple steps seem so simple. But when you combine them, it really is a secret sauce. And you find that the person that you're in love with is so much deeper and richer than your projection ever could have been.
Absolutely. And I would offer, should you go down those steps, you might even think and feel that about yourself.
Heck yeah.
We might realize that the person that we are is far richer and deeper than we even imagined ourselves to be. And the moment that we give ourselves that grace and we see ourselves at that capacity and we see that love and that energy and that source within ourselves, I can almost guarantee that you will start to see it in the people around you, including your partner.
And the cool thing is, it's not like we're just agreeing. There are scientific studies. I'm kind of a science gal. And there is a study out of the University of North Carolina that reflects that when couples take the time to do those 3 steps, especially around the gratitude side, that the satisfaction in their relationships and the connection in their relationships more than doubles. More than doubles. So just by being present with one another and not projecting desires, but being present and giving gratitude, your relationship can more than double in satisfaction. I think it's worth the test, right?
Absolutely.
It's worth a test. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, yeah, I could do that, give it 30 days. I mean, You have to give it some time. You can't give it 3 days and go, it hasn't doubled. You're not telling the truth. You have to give it a little bit of time, right? Give it 30 days and then check back in and tell us how it went for you. We would love to know because we know that it's made a marked difference for us. And our past experience of relationships versus this relationship, it is night and day. And so it would be wonderful to know how it has really landed for other couples. Or if you're already doing this in your relationship, tell us and tell us if you have other practices that you add to this that have really helped you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're 11 years into our honeymoon phase, but how many are 20 years? How many are 30, 40, 50 years into their honeymoon
Yeah, let's
phase?
celebrate
Yeah,
that.
I absolutely.
100%. So, if you are someone who is really seeking to understand, am I in love with the idea of my partner? Or are we truly soul connected? Take some time, answer those 4 questions. And then, if you feel like maybe we are in love with the idea of one another or our story, then execute those 3 little steps and see how it works for you. And then tell us about it. We really, really do want to hear from you. And if you're someone who is like 10, 20, 30 years into your relationship and you're still in the honeymoon phase, tell us about that too. That way we can all learn and grow together as a community.
And if you really like this episode and got a ton of value around your relationship, we'd love for you to join our relationship evolution community. We are launching in 2026, and we actually have the wait list. It's completely free. You can go check it out in the description below. And we're going to be talking about tons of amazing relationship tips just like this and so much more. We're going to be doing this over 7 different months starting in 2026. And we're so excited. And it's going to be everything from your personal relationship to your romantic relationship to your friends and family, coworkers, etc. All levels of relationships. So again, yeah, if this really aligned with you and you felt like this, what we're talking about resonates with you and helps you in your relationships, we'd love for you to join us in this amazing adventure with relationship evolution. Click the link below, learn more, and we hope to see you in the free community.
And while you're here, take a few moments and like and subscribe and share this episode with someone that you know who might be looking for this information. It helps us more than we can say. And 2, there's a lot of other great information out here on the Heart Leader podcast. So explore. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.